Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we're going to continue crossover month with one that is kind of an interesting crossover, as many see this one as a bit of a redemption for both franchises, as they did meet on television, that being 2019's The Power Rangers and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The first time, it was the Power Rangers in space meeting the Turtles from Next Mutation, a TV series so awful that internet reviewer Phaelus has reviewed the entire show and probably deserves a Medal of Honor for that. However, we're not here to talk about that crossover. Instead, we follow the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers team of the Boom Studios comics, who are essentially like the team of the show, with 5 teenagers with attitude, later 6, tasked by a wizard named Zordon to fight evil with the help of magical coins that grant them ancient powers and summon giant robots, with a slightly modern update, while the Turtles here are more akin to the IDW version, with a mix of the classics, which if you recall, back in my Christmas haul video in 2020, I brought up how the Turtles have a more supernatural origin, which I'll discuss more in detail whenever I cover the IDW run of Tmnt, but the short version is that in this continuity, Master Splinter and the Turtles are reincarnations of Amato Yoshi and his 4 sons who lived in feudal Japan but were tragically killed by the Shredder, who found a way to prolong his life so he could rule the Foot Clan in modern day with Karai, who though in most incarnations is his daughter, sometimes adopted, sometimes biological, but in here is his granddaughter. Again, I'll get more into detail on that another time, but it's not really important here. Besides, despite having a big change there when it came to their origin, the Turtles and Splinter are essentially the same in personality and mannerisms. They still at one point were just regular animals that got mutated thanks to a mysterious mutagenic ooze, live in New York, love pizza, and were named after Renaissance painters, Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo. With a few human friends, with 2 prominent being April O'Neil, a sometimes reporter, sometimes scientist, sometimes high schooler, but always an optimistic and kind-hearted friend despite having an usually awkward start, and Casey Jones, who no matter what continuity always ends up being the professor of Pain 101 as they face the Foot Clan. And with those backstories out of the way, let's see what they've learned from past mistakes. Warning, spoilers. Our story begins in the city of Angel Grove, where we see the Mighty Morphin team facing off against the monster with a silly yet kinda badass name, Apocalypus, which is surprising enough, despite sounding like one, there is no cheesy B movie with that name. Can't be the only one that thinks it's a missed opportunity. Anyway, off topic. The Rangers fry up some calamari, and while that's happening, we head to New York as we see the Turtles doing their thing and smashing the Foot, all while asking a hypothetical question on what would they like the most if they were human. It's an interesting and also funny moment, but it is cut short as Raph encounters one particular ninja that, once unmasked, is revealed to be Tommy Oliver, who, although would go by many Ranger titles in the series, at this point in time is the Mighty Morphin Green Ranger. He kicks Raph's shell and escapes with the other ninja, leaving the Turtles concerned and Raph itching for a rematch. The next day, we return to Angel Grove and see that most of the Rangers are just exhausted, with Zach, the Black Ranger, and Trini, the Yellow Ranger, talking about how all these monster attacks are really starting to make things harder for their school life, and even personal life, though Jason, the Red Ranger, and Billy, the Blue Ranger, remind them that they are the only ones that can handle the forces of Rita, the main villain of the first season. And while that's going on, we see Kimberly, the Pink Ranger, and Tommy's girlfriend, talking to Zordon and his robot assistant Alpha on Tommy, who told them that he was going to be going away with his family, but because he hasn't been contacting them in a while, has left Kimberly a little concerned. But Zordon tells her that they wouldn't be able to find him if they wanted to. A great wizard, everyone, since apparently he and Alpha would only be able to track Tommy if he was morphed, which he hasn't done since he left. Speaking of Tommy, we see that he's making an impression in the Foot Clan, and after a brief interrogation with Karai, he seems to be able to lie his way out of it, and is sent on another mission for the Foot, but runs into the Turtles, and Raph says, "Ninja move silently, like lasagna." Kind of a random line, but hey, it's Turtles. Tommy morphs into the Green Ranger, and they duke it out. But as mentioned before, with him morphing, Zordon is able to track him and believes that he's in danger, sending the other Rangers. Thinking the Turtles are one of Rita's monsters, the teams fight, and while the 2 teams fight, Kimberly asks Tommy what's going on, but all Tommy can say is that they have to trust him for the moment, and that he's sorry because he didn't want to get them involved. As he leaves, the teams continue to fight, and as they fight, we see that the Shredder and Karai are watching them. It is revealed that they know who Tommy really is, and and that now that the rest of the Rangers are there, they will kneel before him. As the fight concludes with both teams realizing they're not the enemy, as you do in most crossovers, they make their leave, though not without April O'Neil with the rest of Channel 6 to see the Rangers and reporting their arrival to New York, but of course refraining from mentioning the Turtles. As the two teams make peace and realize that they have a common enemy in the Shredder, they join forces to figure out what exactly Shredder is planning and why Tommy is undercover. Speaking of Tommy, we see him at the Shredder's base, and we find out why Tommy is with the Foot Clan. Turns out an old friend of his, Tyler, was manipulated into joining them and hopes to get him out, but Tyler is too far gone and ends up betraying Tommy, handing him over to Shredder. With April's help, the two teams are able to find the Foot Clan's hideout that Tommy was based in, but after fighting Karai, they learn they are too late, and as the Shredder steals Tommy's morpher, he actually teleports to Rita's palace on the moon, and since it was under her possession before Tommy, she demands it back. But instead, Shredder responds with him using the power himself, morphing into his own Ranger suit. What will he do with such power? How will this affect Rita's plans? What new powers will the Rangers and Turtles discover on this adventure? But most importantly, what did Raph mean when he said ninjas are like lasagna? Seriously, the hell? The comic was written by Ryan Parrott, who actually had a lot of experience writing for the Power Rangers, with first writing the title series Go-Go Power Rangers, and then later the main title after Shattered Grid, a crossover event where all the Rangers teamed up. And even his own original series, Rogue Sun, which is inspired by both Power Rangers and fellow Tokusatsu series Kamen Rider. So by this point, there's no doubt that he'd be able to cover the Ranger side of the story. But how does he fare with the TMNT? Since from what I can gather, this was his first time writing the TMNT, but he nailed it. He does a great job with these teams. They don't feel out of place, and much like the Batman Shadow crossover, they complement each other pretty well, and there's never a point where one overpowers the other, unlike a certain crossover, and it's also great for new readers for both sides. It doesn't feel like the reader has to have decades worth of information to understand what's going on. This is also a very fast-paced comic. This comic had 5 issues, but honestly, it doesn't feel like that, which isn't a problem, at least for the most part. Most of the time, it doesn't feel rushed, with only one exception, which I'll discuss in a bit, but it's more of a hiccup than anything, and it really won't hurt the story for you. Now, do I wish it was longer? Oh, definitely, but it's more because I was having so much fun reading it than feeling like I didn't get enough story. Now, let's talk about the characters, which due to the comic's fast pace, and it's clearly meant to be a fun joyride, so no major development really happens. I'm going to talk about most of the characters, with the exception of Tommy and the main villains, in a group, starting with the teenagers with attitude, the Ninja Turtles, and the Power Rangers. These characters, as I mentioned before, are written so on point, and the interactions are pretty natural. The Rangers are so much like the ones from the TV series, with just a bit of a modern update, while Turtles are essentially the IDW incarnations, with the exception of Raph, who, for some reason, felt a lot like the Raph from the 2003 series. Again, that's not a problem, I like the 2003 series. I just imagined Greg Abbey doing the voice. As for the interactions, we of course have the standard ones that we all saw coming, like Leo and Jason bonding over leadership, Donnie and Billy as the resident geniuses of their respective teams. But then we have some interesting ones, like Raph and Trini having a moment where they debate on who has it easier when it comes to being a hero, and a pretty funny moment where Mikey and Zach are bonding over pizza that have really weird toppings. If I had to pick one weak point, I would have to say it's Kimberly and April. And it's also the one time where I feel like the fast pace of the comic wasn't working. Since it's clear that Parrott wanted to have a tighter emotional bond with the two, like the rest, but the moments go by so fast and so far between, they just lack that chemistry that they really need to stand out. Again, it's a nitpick, but I thought it was worth acknowledging. The overall interactions are great and again, pretty simple, with no major character arcs or changes necessary to make this exciting. Next, let's talk about the Green Ranger, Tommy Oliver. This character is definitely not in a great place. Besides having to go undercover as a foot ninja, he's lying to his friends about what he's been doing in an attempt to protect his friend, which definitely did not go well, since he has definitely been drinking the foot Kool-Aid. That sounded dirtier than I planned, my bad. And to top it all off, his powers were stolen by the Shredder. Still, better than being the Red Turbo Ranger. But out of all seriousness, Tommy and his old friend Tyler's arc is the emotional drive of the story, as Tommy feels like he knows what Tyler is going through, since when he first appeared on the show, he was serving under Rita trying to destroy the Rangers. We also dive more into Tommy's past as we learn more about his relationship with Tyler and the hardships they went through as they were kids in foster care. This was a definite welcome and another example of why I recommend checking out the Boom Studios comics. Since during the early days of the series, it was very rare for us to really dive into the characters' lives outside of being Rangers. As for Tommy's interaction with the TMNT, it's pretty limited outside of his rivalry with Raph, with the first 2 fights he had with him, while he mostly spends time with the villains, first going undercover and later their prisoner, which is still interesting and pretty intense since after he gets caught, you're kinda left wondering how how he's gonna get out of it. Next, we got the Empress of Evil, Rita Repulsa, who though in the show is mostly a comedic villain, with a few moments of being legitimately intimidating, the Boom Studios comics made her a terrifying force. Sure, she still has her moments of being funny, but in this comic, most of the comedic stuff with the villains go to the villains' henchmen, like Bebop and Rocksteady, or Rita's goons, like Squat and Babu. She's also a bit of a wild card in here, since you're never really sure what Rita's game is, since it is very clear that she is not happy that Shredder has the Green Ranger power, but can't deny that he has some impressive skills and information that she might find useful. Now, her and Shredder teaming up was very likely to happen, but even then, it really knew how to keep me on my toes. Moving on, we have the leader of the Foot Clan, the Tmnt's greatest foe, and in this story, the wielder of the power of the Green Ranger, Oroku Saki, aka the Shredder. This guy here is a straight up force of nature, as he's able to just force his way into the world of Power Rangers. Whenever he's around, you just feel the intensity. Even when he's with someone who is incredibly loyal to him, you never feel like they're safe in the room with him. Like, just one bad move will immediately have him tearing them apart. He's also a master manipulator. As I mentioned, he already knew who Tommy was, and set all this up just to gain their powers. I knew Shredder was going to be awesome, but this story really put this on the top 10 of the best Shredder moments. As for other characters like Master Splinter, Casey Jones, April O'Neil, Karai, Bebop and Rocksteady, Tyler, Zordon, Alpha, or any of Rita's henchmen, I can't say too much for spoiler reasons, but also because, well, to be honest, some of them are really just there. I mean, they're written well and on point with their characters, and have some pretty cool moments like Karai and Casey Jones, and of course Splinter and Zordon sharing some wise sage advice to our young heroes, or in the case of Splinter making a joke that was actually pretty funny, and I just love the way it messes with Billy. And of course, Bebop and Rocksteady get to go toe-to-toe with both teams. Well, Rita's henchmen are, well, yeah, they really are just in the background. But hey, still better than Baxter Stockman, who though gets mentioned a lot in the story, never shows up. As for Tyler, yeah, it really is a spoiler thing that I can't really talk about with him. But I will say, for an OC, he's really well done, and he fits right at home with both the world of the TMNT and the Power Rangers. Finally, we got the art by Simon Dumio, whose sleek, sharp style is just perfect for both Power Rangers and TMNT. In fact, he's done a lot of art for Power Rangers comics, with the most prominent being the comic storyline Beyond the Grid. The action looks fun, dynamic, which is always needed for any story involving either of the franchises, and because it's a comic and not TV, he was able to have more creative freedom when it came to designing the monsters for the Power Rangers to fight. Like in the beginning with Apocalypus, who definitely looks more octopus than man. Yeah, in the show we did get some really awesome monsters, some looking a bit more inhuman, like Scorpius in Lost Galaxy, but it's few far between, and even when we did get more inhuman looking villains, like in Power Rangers SPD with Omni, or the Master in Mystic Force, they end up gaining humanoid forms, like Omni's ship the Magnificent becoming a new Zord for him to pilot, or the Master gaining a new body near the end of Mystic Force. But whatever, I'm getting off tangent. Point being, Mio really got to stretch his creative legs, and help come up with some really awesome designs, that besides looking cool to look at, would also work as really awesome toys. Some things never change. Of course, there's also a color by Walter Beaumont and Igor Monti assisting, since this comic had to be incredibly vibrant, since, again, this is the Power Rangers we're talking about. A lot of color needed to be used for this. But they also knew how to be calm and subdued when it needed to be, particularly moments with the Shredder, or just more serious moments like when Tommy's talking to Tyler. When it comes to any complaints when it comes to the art, I guess the little white particles that are just kind of there in the comic is a bit distracting, but didn't really ruin it for me. In the end, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is definitely something I recommend. It's fun, dynamic, and not afraid to really play with the concept. If you love Power Rangers or TMNT, or just want something crazy, sit back and grab a slice, because this is the book for you. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and next time, for Crossover Month, we actually follow the company that formerly owned the comic rights to Power Rangers and TMNT, as we see Marvel and Archie Comics do a crossover that birthed an interesting subgenre, and made me an occasional reader. Later. And yes, I'm fully aware that by the time of this recording, they have announced that they will be doing a sequel, and I am excited.